story through a marketing lens. I also understood story through a neuroscience lens after interviewing over 550 people in brain science or spirituality, and understanding how you can actually reverse engineer that marketing story for yourself. When you are living on autopilot, you're living through your inner story, the story that you tell yourself about anything. And so you have to change the story if you want to change your behavior. That's why I come back to that so often. Otherwise, again, you'll get in your own way of why you should or shouldn't do this. But when you see yourself through story and you become the hero of that and connect it to the future you want to build, you can much more easily adapt to that behavior change. But then the third one that people often find surprising is I have spent an odd amount of time researching ancient wisdom, theology, and for a while, because of my upbringing in a religion that never really felt quite right, I spent some time debunking the Bible almost. And not necessarily debunking it, but trying to figure out what the truth was. And I started to realize that we've always understood the power of story, even in ancient times. This is why Jesus spoke in parables. It's why he actually told stories in different ways depending on the audience he was speaking to. The masses versus his inner circle. They got different versions of the story depending on what they were ready for. Additionally, you can look at ancient wisdom traditions and realize that a lot of them had wisdom keepers. For example, the Celtic bards actually had storytellers, professionally storytellers, that would dedicate their lives to understanding how to read empathy through people, how to see what the culture needed at the time so that it could tell the stories in a way that would resonate most deeply. Stories were living transmissions. They weren't meant to be told the same way all the time. 300 years after Jesus died, the Roman Empire took over and they needed legitimacy for their reign, and so they decided on a unifying religion, and Christianity was growing at the time. And so they co-opted that, and they killed all the original Christians, stripped a lot of the Gnostic texts like the kingdom of heaven is within you and the power of God is within you, and they made it more of something that you needed to obey in order to receive salvation, obey and believe. But that stripped the consciousness technology of the stories. And so now we're looking at Adam and Eve in a way of, for example, like a snake actually started speaking. It was Satan, blah, blah, blah. Like, people don't even realize that the snake was never even called Satan. We've filled in so many things based on this story. And that Genesis story is actually the fall of consciousness. It's the story of everybody choosing to take human form and what that actually means. And so my book brings all of these ideas together. Part one is telling my story along with teaching components of, how you actually realize what story is running your life and creating that default programming. Part two is all about the science of story and breaking down some of these stories that we were all raised with to actually feel the resonance underneath, to feel the change it was trying to help us make. And then part three is how to become the author of your own life, how to actually use this in your own life to rewrite some of those inner narratives for whatever future you find ideal for yourself.
You know what I appreciate about you is that the art of, it's not even the storytelling, it's the art of how much you deep dive into things and you break it up. Because the Bible is like, that is something that's its own piece of work. That's its own thing, right? And my Bible stays open on, my nighttime dresser, things like that. So for you to take that deep dive and break it down the way you are, I'm like, damn. Okay. maybe that's a new passion project. I would love to see you, and maybe this is just me just listening with intention and giving you some value as well. You go into it and break down certain parts of the Testament and stuff like that, and really storytell in a way so it can be more palatable. Because I think so many folks get lost when it comes to the Bible. They want to try to read it and then they get lost.
Well, I'll give you a little teaser. Like, do you want to do Genesis real quick?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, so Eden represents unconscious unity. It also fits in my framework really well. This is the algorithm. This is the norm they were born into. This is when life feels figured out, but you're just cruising along. Now, the serpent, which again was never called evil, it was called cunning, which can also mean wise, not always deceptive. But the serpent brings in activation energy. And so this is more like the question, the things that disruption, questioning your assumptions. And the snake only ever says, "Are you sure that God told you not to eat from this tree?" But it's also sort of like asking, are those limits really real? And so this apple activates choice points and develops discernment. This is when people are like, wait, do I have to do this? Or have I just been doing this because I think I should? The hiding represents your first spiritual bypass when you can't handle the new awareness. This is that sort of resistance period. It's the battle between old and new. Like, I don't know, I'm going to pretend that I'm still over here, but I actually think I'm over here. Like, everything's different now. I can't unlearn what I just learned. But then the consequences teach you the rules of duality. So it's not punishment, but it's curriculum. And people think, oh, well, God said, like, now you're banished and childbirth is going to be hard and you have to work for your food. But aren't those also just the prerequisites for choosing to be human for this lifetime? And then the exile represents conscious partnership with the divine. It's this graduation into co-creation. Okay, I'm not living in the unity anymore, but I know that it's there. I can still call on it when I need it, but now I'm doing the hard work of being human. And so that's what the story is actually underlying. And there's other ancient texts that have very similar stories to that. But again, so much unlocks when you open yourself to what the meaning of it is rather than arguing over whether this is historically accurate or exactly as it happened, or could humanity start from just two people, or hey, look at these lineages in two different parts of the Bible, they're completely contradictory. And so you can just release all of that. I believe literalism was probably the worst thing to happen to the Bible. But when you can soften into it a little bit and just let it change you, there's a whole lot there.
Jesus. Boy, oh boy, I feel like hitting my soundboard. Use your imagination, folks. We ain't going to take away from the conversation. But no, it's so profound. Just the way the breakdown of that is. Because it makes sense. It makes sense. Now, that's like, I got to go back and now listen and take that part up and be like, break this down, that is that, and that is that. And then now apply it. Right? Yeah. And that's the thing is what I love about podcasting. I know you love this too. We find so many folks, different walks of life, right? The world is what now, 8 point some odd billion people now, right? It's increased.
Yeah.
But they all have a different way to storytell.
Yeah.
They storytell in such a unique way to be palatable. Some people are doing it in a very aggressive manner to shake the globe even more than it needs to. But then there's the ones like ourselves that are bringing humanity and order and vulnerability all to the forefront, right? And I feel like that's where the world's now going. It's shifting from the fake to now those real conversations for us to be able to understand and things like that.
Well, go back to your Bible, read some of these with a different lens, and don't skip the Gnostic texts, especially the Book of Thomas and the Book of Mary. Both of those will give you a completely different perspective on what Jesus was trying to say, and will actually change the way you see certain things in the canonical text as well.
I love that.